Welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today we are diving into the book Living Your Best Third Act. This is just an absolutely fascinating read by Milan Schwarzkopf. And you know, he's not just a PhD and an MBA, he's actually a former IT project manager. That background is completely crucial here, because he brings this highly structured, almost engineer-like discipline to a topic that, let's face it, most people just treat as a really long vacation, retirement. But before we get into the weeds, just think about this for a second. How much time have you actually spent planning what your random Tuesday afternoons are going to look like in retirement? Well, today's explainer is going to completely shift how you view your post-career life. We're going to look at why you need to stop thinking of retirement as just stopping work and start treating it as a massive professional project, a really dynamic, intentionally designed third act.
Schwarzkopf points out this huge, glaring blind spot that almost all high achievers share. I mean, we spend up to 40 years aggressively preparing for and building our careers, right? We go to school, we network, we climb the corporate ladder, we literally obsess over our professional trajectory. But then, when it comes to the massive 20 to 30-year chapter that comes right after it, 0 days. Literally 0 days spent actually planning the day-to-day reality of it. Think about it. If you retire at 60, your third act might be just as long as your entire professional career. It's not the finish line, guys. It's the main event.
And he warns us that without a highly structured plan, that dream of endless leisure, it very quickly devolves into a tragedy. He paints the super vivid picture of this, defining it by what he calls the 3 best friends of a failed retirement: the couch, the fridge, and the TV. Look, freedom sounds totally amazing when you're super stressed at the office, but absolute, unstructured leisure is actually the absolute enemy of happiness. Let's be honest here, marathoning daytime television while wearing out the springs in your couch is a fantastic weekend, but it is a thoroughly miserable decade. A life completely devoid of routine and purpose just turns into stagnation.
Okay, let's dive into this. To solve this whole issue, Schwarzkopf outlines a framework of 4 strictly required pillars. 1. Financial security. 2. The health equation. 3. Social scaffolding. And 4. Purposeful meaning.
Let's kick things off with Pillar 1, financial security. You see, society focuses almost exclusively on the math of retirement, right? The 401k, the stock portfolio, that magical, massive number you supposedly need to hit. But the psychology of financial security is actually just as critical as the mechanics. You have got to transition from an accumulation mindset to a distribution mindset. For 40 years, your brain is just totally wired to hoard wealth, to make that pile of money as giant as possible. But a really successful financial plan for your third act, that requires creating reliable income for life. It's all about eliminating that deep emotional fear of running out of money, which can honestly paralyze you and stop you from actually enjoying the wealth you've worked so hard to build. It's not about some one-size-fits-all number. It's about tailoring a strategy to support your actual lifestyle and just removing that constant nagging anxiety. Moving right along to Pillar 2, the health equation.
Here is the harsh, undeniable reality. An ironclad, multi-million-dollar financial plan completely and utterly crumbles if you don't have the physical and mental health to actually enjoy it. Health is literally the absolute foundation that holds the entire thing up. Schwarzkopf lays out a really specific, proactive, 4-step daily protocol to protect your well-being. And it's not just about, trying not to get sick. It's an aggressive defense. Step 1 is strict nutrition, meaning heavily controlling your intake of sugar, salt, and alcohol. Step 2, mandatory daily movement. Step 3, and this one is uniquely specific from his research, is intentional sun exposure to regulate your body's natural rhythms. And Step 4 is rigid sleep hygiene and stress management. Honestly, treating these 4 steps as a totally non-negotiable daily project is exactly how you bulletproof your retirement plans against physical decline.
All right, Pillar 3, social scaffolding.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is, it brings us face to face with the silent killer of retirement: profound isolation and loneliness. Men, in particular, often lose up to 90% of their social circle the absolute second they leave the office. Just let that sink in for a minute. 90%. For decades, your social life, your lunch breaks, your daily water cooler chats, they are entirely facilitated by your job. When the job ends, that built-in community just completely evaporates overnight.
And that right there is exactly why the book really emphasizes that you must build your social scaffolding before you leave the job. This is such an incredibly proactive, empowering shift from your typical retirement advice. Schwarzkopf outlines a really solid 5-step approach to intentionally constructing strong networks across your family, your friendships, and your local community. You absolutely cannot wait until you are feeling lonely to start trying to make friends. You need to treat relationship building as a deliberate, active project right now so that you are fully supported and connected on literally day one of your new life.
And that brings us to Pillar 4, purposeful meaning.
Look, you can have all the money in the world, flawless health, and a fantastic group of friends, but I'm telling you, it means absolutely nothing if you lack a compelling reason to actually get out of bed in the morning. I really want you to ask yourself, who are you when the job title is gone? For so many ambitious professionals and high achievers, their corporate title is basically their entire identity. It's how they introduce themselves at dinner parties, right? It's how they gauge their actual value to the world. So how are you going to define your worth when you no longer have that VP or director title attached to your name? Because if you don't answer that question, you risk what Schwarzkopf vividly calls intellectual rot. It sounds intense, right? But this is that mental decline, that terrible brain fog, and the emotional stagnation that really sets in when a retiree lacks a brand new mission or a real commitment to lifelong learning. To actively protect your mind and your soul, you have got to build daily structure, create new routines, and find a post-career mission that challenges you just as much as your old job did.
So, how do we pull this all together? Achieving a balanced life.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core philosophy of the book, the four-legged table. Your third act absolutely requires equal parts of all four components. 25% financial, 25% health, 25% social, and 25% purpose. All four are strictly required for truly balanced life. If you spend 100% of your time just obsessing over your investment portfolio, but zero time figuring out your social scaffolding or what your life's purpose is, well, the table flips over. It just collapses. True freedom actually requires a surprising amount of discipline across all four of these quadrants to be genuinely enjoyable.
To actually put this into action, the author challenges you to implement what he calls the 6-month reset. Instead of treating those first 6 to 12 months of retirement as some long, lazy vacation, treat it as rigorous pre-production. Treat it as a highly disciplined, dedicated project to establish your new routines, dial in your health equation, solidify those social networks, and really map out your new purpose. It is a crucial time of active construction, not just passive winding down.
This whole holistic, human-centric approach is just incredibly validating. In fact, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, the absolutely legendary leadership thinker, even calls the book a masterpiece that humanizes your retirement plan. It totally shifts the conversation away from just looking at dry spreadsheets and focuses intensely on what actually makes a human being happy, healthy, and fulfilled in their later years.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this. Is your third act going to be a tragedy defined by the couch, the fridge, and the TV? Are you going to put in the project management work today to make it your absolute masterpiece? Take control of your 4 pillars and start designing the absolute best chapter of your life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.